Welcome to the deep dive.
Hey there.
So today we're diving into some really interesting source material. We've got excerpts from a stand-up comedy performance.
Yeah, and our mission really is to go beyond just the laughs. We want to pull out the key insights here.
Exactly, looking at culture, family, relationships, identity, even money. It's all woven into these personal stories.
Right. Think of it as kind of a shortcut. We'll explore the main themes, the anecdotes in the source, and connect them to maybe broader ideas, identity, relationships, how we navigate things today.
It's fascinating how personal observations can really shed light on bigger stuff.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this, maybe with something lots of people connect with. Family dynamics, parental influence specifically.
Yeah, the source material digs into this idea that comedian calls fear-mongering parenting.
Which is a strong term, but it kind of lands, doesn't it?
It does. It's about these, extreme warnings.
Yeah.
Almost like an original form of fake news, used to instill caution.
Like the examples he gives. Don't go outside without a jacket or you'll get the flu. Or a fan will give you pneumonia.
Or sleeping with wet hair could kill you.
Fatal wet hair, that's what.
So,
And the video games one, linking it directly to childhood leukemia, it just shows how these really outlandish fears were presented as totally serious, undeniable consequences, basically, to control behavior.
yeah, painting the worst case scenario for minor things, just to get compliance.
Exactly, a parenting style where hyperbole is the main tool.
Okay, so moving from family dynamics to more shared experiences, the source also touches on recent stuff like the pandemic and how it's affected people.
Wait, there's that observation about feeling mentally aged by 20 years.
Totally relatable.
Yeah, and just losing the desire to go out like you used to.
Definitely felt that. And the example of skipping Coachella for a Don McLean concert because, you prefer seats and early start times now.
And enjoying that everyone else there has a bad hip so no one blocks the view. Huh. It's such a specific, funny image, but it captures that shift in priorities, right? Comfort zones changing after the last few years.
It really does. It reflects, I think, for a lot of people, a move towards valuing comfort, predictability,
Yeah.
maybe an earlier bedtime.
Finding joy in a different pace, maybe a slower pace.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Cultural identity, how we see each other. There's a really standout anecdote in the source, set in a military town bar.
Oh, yeah, this one's good. A soldier comes up to the comedian, wants to buy him a drink.
Because he was stationed in Okinawa,
Yeah.
right, and said the people there were nothing but nice.
Which sounds friendly enough on the surface.
But then the comedian points out, well, Okinawa is in Japan, and he's Chinese.
Right, and the soldier's assumption, you guys all look alike.
Yeah.
And his insistence that it doesn't even matter. It just immediately flags that whole complexity around Asian identity.
Yeah.
And sometimes the ignorance.
And the comedian's comeback that it does matter,
Yeah.
especially with the whole U.S. military presence in Japan being partly about keeping an eye on China, that adds this whole other layer.
Yeah, a geopolitical context to just a casual bar interaction. It uses humor, but it pushes back hard against that idea that, ethnic or national differences don't matter.
And it reveals those nuances within broad racial categories that often get glossed over.
Totally. And then the soldier's final comment about loving pad thai. Pad thai.
Oh, right, a Thai dish. Just adds another layer to that slightly misguided attempt at connection.
Exactly.
So building on that idea of cultural nuance, the source has this really funny observation about telling Asian people apart by the sound of their disappointment.
This is great. It's playful, but sharp, Looking at how emotions are expressed differently, the idea is disappointment makes distinct sounds.
So Chinese disappointment is described as a sound of disgust, like walking into a smoky room. Makes a slight disgusted noise.
Yeah, something like that. And then Japanese disappointment is more of a questioning why, like seeking an explanation.
And Korean
disappointment is described with intensity, maybe ready to fight, but delivered politely. A guttural sound followed by a thank you.
It's such a witty way to highlight those perceived differences in emotional style, communication style across distinct Asian cultures.
Definitely.
Okay, so from navigating how others see you, let's look inward a bit. Identity and representation in media. The source reflects on that past struggle.
Yeah, the comedian talks about how frustrating it was with Halloween costumes. Options were basically Bruce Lee for years.
Right. But then contrast that with the recent sort of joy and pride from stuff like Squid Game.
Or Silicon Valley. Getting a Squid Game costume with his Indian friend, that becomes this moment of connection. finding relevant cultural touchstones in mainstream pop culture.
And it's not just about being seen, right? It's
Yeah.
about global success.
Exactly. Squid Game being huge internationally,
Mhm.
all in Korean, or BTS taking over the world without primarily using English, that represents a massive shift.
Yeah, what global success can look like for non-Western content. It's powerful.
Totally.
There's also that really funny but also kind of awkward story about the Emmy ceremony. It captures this identity and perception theme perfectly, especially in professional settings.
Ah, yes, the mix-up, trying to network,
Yeah, and mistaking Evan Rachel Wood for Rachel Brosnahan,
thinking he's congratulating Mrs. Maisel on her success.
only to realize after feeling kind of blown off that he was talking to Evan Rachel Wood from Westworld. Whoops.
And the punchline is him realizing, wait, I was the one mixing them up, joking about how Asian people, we don't all look alike until we need to.
Right. And feeling like he was a racist person in that specific moment. It's great because it flips the script on those stereotypes, shows how misidentification can happen to anyone. It's awkwardly funny.
Very much so.
Okay, circling back just for a second to collective experiences, the source has some interesting takes on mask wearing and social distancing during the pandemic, too.
Yeah, there's the personal reason, which is funny, just not wanting to talk to anybody.
Huh. I get that.
But that personal thing connects to a wider cultural observation.
Right. He points to the old Chinese lady in Chinatown wearing a mask since, like, 1995.
Calls her a trailblazer. Compares her to Kendall Jenner for doing it before it was cool or required.
It kind of reframes what maybe seemed unusual as, well, prescient, maybe culturally specific even, noting that readiness in some Asian communities, with gloves and face shields too.
And then there's the idea of Asian social distancing through bowing.
Yeah. Turning interactions into a bowing contest to see who can be more respectful and get further away.
It's a clever cultural observation. And this whole perspective is contrasted in the source with a view of, say, American resistance to rules.
Framed as rebellion, right.
Right.
And ironically linked back to his own mom's fear-mongering as maybe a source of distrust and authority. It's complex.
It is. Lots of layers there.
The source also gives us a pretty good look into the comedian's relationship with his father, Richard Wu Yang.
Right. We learn his dad became an actor later in life, maybe saw it pragmatically, like it seemed easy.
Could be. And then he tried to become an influencer.
Which, yeah, led to some interesting social media moments, like that controversial All Lives Matter Instagram post.
Oh, boy. And the comedian's reaction making him take it down, trying to explain the nuances. It just captures that classic generational clash and cultural clash, maybe, and understanding social media issues.
Totally highlights how different generations see and use these platforms.
Yeah.
And then there are the fathers. Weird beauty standards.
Those are amazing. The specific criteria, like needing long arms, or the exact distance between the mouth and nose.
It's so specific.
Gold. And it leads into that scene of introducing his white girlfriend. The tension, the father's reaction.
Instant posture change. Putting on a British accent, suddenly.
And declaring them a prosperous young couple.
It's funny, but it really illustrates how people might perform for, perceived outsiders, combined with this very practical, success-focused observation about their future.
And the follow-up All Lives Matter comment from the dad after hearing about her success just adds another layer to his, let's say, unique perspective.
Unfiltered is maybe the word.
Okay, let's pivot from family to romantic relationships, specifically the one with his venture capitalist girlfriend.
Right. There's that joke about him being her sugar baby.
Flipping the stereotype, declaring it gender equality when the man gets taken care of.
Yeah, it uses humor to kind of point at those evolving dynamics and expectations in relationships today.
The source also has some surprisingly, insightful advice on handling conflict. Presented humorously, of course.
The core idea is when your partner's upset, it's not even about you.
Okay.
You're just a victim of circumstance.
Oh.
So the advice is to jujitsu this situation.
Jujitsu it. How does that work?
It means you use the energy of the conflict, right?
Yeah.
But not to fight back against whatever the sophist complaint is.
Yeah.
You redirect it. Try to uncover the real problem underneath.
Ah, okay. And the anecdote that illustrates this is perfect.
The girlfriend being upset about date nights. But after he applies this jujitsu thing.
It turns out the real issue was, her friend's cousin didn't know her name at a party?
Exactly. It shows how these seemingly unrelated stresses, maybe insecurities, can pop up as conflict in the relationship. And the technique is about digging deeper to find the root cause.
Not just arguing about the symptom. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Communication comes up a lot, too. especially talking about feelings.
The comedian talks about his own struggle with that, defaulting to, I feel fine.
And humorously warning, like, don't push for more detail unless you're ready for some dark shit.
Yeah. And then there's that classic comedic contrast between girls' night and guys' night.
Right. Girls' night, sitting in a circle, direct eye contact, talking things through.
Versus guys' night. Sitting in a line, watching TV, zero eye contact.
It's a common observation, but it highlights those perceived differences, doesn't it, in emotional communication styles.
Yeah, one focused on verbal processing and connection. The other may be more about shared activity, parallel presence, without needing that direct emotional talk.
And this connects really well to the idea of love languages explored through a cultural lens.
Totally. The source contrasts those Western ideas, words of affirmation, physical touch, stuff like that.
With an Asian upbringing where maybe there's a distinct lack of verbal affirmation, like the best you get is don't fuck it up.
Right. But a really strong emphasis on acts of service.
His parents making a 5-course meal every single night. That's the prime example given.
It's such a crucial insight, isn't it? Love and care are expressed and probably perceived differently across cultures. Recognizing that acts of service might be the main language, even without lots of praise, is key.
Definitely. Gift giving also comes up as a mutual love language in his current relationship.
Yeah, buying shoes for his girlfriend because they wear the same size.
Sharing Jordans. That's presented as a pretty significant gesture of connection.
And that leads into that really funny observation about feet etiquette, culturally specific.
Oh, yeah. White people barefoot.
Black people wearing socks even after showering.
And Asian people with the layers of house shoes and slippers. Never letting feet touch the floor, keeping them baby soft.
It takes this mundane detail about home habits and uses it to highlight these distinct cultural approaches to, like personal care and comfort, and links it back humorously to that soft feet idea from his upbringing.
Food itself is another big love language theme.
Cooking together is mentioned, a way they connect, show love.
Contrasted humorously with those high-stress reality cooking shows.
And there's that great praise for the efficiency of, like, somebody's uncle from Hong Kong working in a Chinese restaurant.
Making 485 items in under 30 seconds, calling him the real hero.
It's just appreciation for the skill, the dedication, the often unseen labor that goes into food in certain cultural contexts.
Yeah. The source also touches on difficulty asking for what you want directly, calling it passive aggressiveness.
Right. The comedian admits to doing this. Yeah. Uses the example of wanting bento boxes.
Super relatable. Instead of asking, he'd just passively hint by watching YouTube videos of Japanese housewives making these elaborate bento boxes.
His girlfriend's reaction is just direct, no nonsense. Calls him out, why don't you just ask me directly?
And maybe jokingly suggests he go find a Japanese woman if that's what he wants. It's blunt.
A blunt reality check, yeah. But the funny twist is the outcome is him now making her bento boxes as his love language.
So confronting those communication patterns, even awkwardly, can lead to unexpected, meaningful expressions of affection.
Seems so.
Okay, let's shift focus again slightly. Friends, life philosophy. The source gives some counterintuitive advice about friends.
Yeah, the suggestion to keep your loser friends over your successful friends.
Because the successful ones are just too busy to hang out.
It's funny, but there's a point there, right? About availability, shared history. Genuine connection often being more important for friendships than just professional status.
True. And speaking of friends and philosophy, there's that whole detailed story about his friend Guam Felix.
Oh, Guam, right? Named after his birthplace, lived in the comedian's living room.
And his core philosophy is just blame the government for anything bad, thank God for anything good.
Effectively absolves him of responsibility, right? Like the speeding ticket government's fault, not his driving.
But he does thank God for letting him stay with his friend. To which the comedian's like, who's actually providing the roof here?
Exactly. And Guam's big dream was winning the lottery. When I win the lottery, D was his catchphrase.
Which led him to try game shows. And that amazing story of going on, let's make a deal.
Dressed as Master Raiden from Mortal Kombat, using a blue bedsheet and a rice patty hat. Incredible.
And he actually wins. The big prize, $50,000 cash.
Yeah, the description of the money falling. Grom's pure joy. Jumping jacks, trying to swim in it, crying. It's this picture of a dream come true.
But then the reality check. Money gone in 3 months.
Spent on buffets, buca de beppo, just gone.
And then the IRS comes knocking. Taxes on the winnings.
And Guam's response, tying it all back to his philosophy, See, that's how the government fucks you, dog.
It's quite the character study. Loyalty, but maybe philosophical detachment. Avoiding accountability, framed through this friendship.
Yeah, it's a lot packed into one story.
Money comes up again, too, when talking about donating to charity.
His mom's opinions on this are something else. Very strong, lots of guilt trips.
Arguing against donating because children can be horrible.
Or that doctors make more money, so they should donate.
And her suggestion, he creates his own website, feedacomedia.com, so he can donate to her and his comedian friends.
It's funny, but it really shows her, like, pragmatic, family-first financial thinking.
Which leads into that really interesting comparison of how different cultures, according to the source, brag about money.
Right. White people, the source suggests, tend to brag about expense. Cost of private school, fancy remodels, expensive trips.
Black people presented as more direct, stating the exact cost of things, cars, houses, chains.
And Asian people, uniquely, brag about savings. It's the guess how much game.
Where the value isn't the high price paid, but the low price achieved. The art is in the savings.
The examples are great. The watch bought for way less, the house bought for half price because someone died in it.
And the ultimate insult isn't guessing too high on the value, but guessing too low on the price saved. That's what's really disappointing.
It's a fantastic cultural observation about value.
So bringing it sort of full circle, back towards the beginning themes,
Yeah.
the source emphasizes this growing sense of pride in upbringing and culture.
Yeah, things that used to be maybe embarrassing, his mom's accent, her being cheap, the food.
Are now seen as the very things that make him unique. Interesting. Relatable.
There's that feeling he expresses, like the tide has turned, everybody want to be more Asian.
Pointing to things like BTS, dim sum popularity, specifically mentioning xiaolongbao, the soup dumplings.
Even interest in Chinese immersion schools. It's a reflection on how cultural identity can shift from being maybe stigmatized to celebrated, a source of strength.
And connection in a world that's changing.
Yeah.
And those specific grounding details, like his dad's frugality.
Choosing Clippers tickets because they were cheaper than Lakers.
Haggling for hot dogs outside the stadium with his mom secretly buying them anyway. It just grounds that whole narrative in real lived experience.
Absolutely.
So after digging through all this, what does it tell us, really?
Well, I think this deep dive really shows how humor can be just an incredibly effective way to deliver some pretty insightful cultural commentary.
Yeah, it reveals complex family stuff,
Yeah.
evolving identities, personal and collective, different ways of looking at relationships, communication, money.
These personal stories, told for laughs, they just have so many layers of meaning, don't they? About the world we live in, the things that shape us.
Different ways we show love, handle money, find our place.
Yeah. The source material gives us this unique, funny, but also really insightful window into how culture, generation, and personal growth all intersect, all through this witty, observant lens.
So for you, the listener, maybe here's a thought to take away from this deep dive.
Consider how your own background, your upbringing, your cultural roots, your personal journey, how does all that shape the way you see fundamental things like love, money, success?
And maybe think about how embracing those unique parts of yourself, the things that make you distinctly you, could actually be your greatest strength, and maybe your best way to connect with others.